The city never really slept. Neon signs flickered above the cracked sidewalks, casting colors that danced on the puddles left by an evening rain. Somewhere in the distance, a saxophone hummed through the night air, carried from a subway entrance where a busker played for spare change. Ethan Walker adjusted his tie as he left the rooftop bar, his expensive shoes splashing slightly against the wet pavement. He hated nights like these, business dinners that stretched too long, forced laughter at jokes that weren't funny, and an endless parade of people who only cared about the weight of his bank account. He was 32, successful by every outside measure, and yet, as he walked through the darkened streets, he felt a hollowness gnaw at his chest. He should have called a driver. But instead, Ethan walked. Maybe he needed to feel the city tonight. Maybe he needed to remember he was still a part of it. That's when he saw her. Through the fogged glass of a late-night diner, a girl stood balancing 2 coffee mugs in her hands. She was laughing, not the polite, filtered laugh he was used to at galas and board meetings, but something free, unrestrained, like music in itself. Her long auburn hair was tied in a loose ponytail, strands escaping around her face. She wore a simple white shirt with sleeves rolled up and an apron tied haphazardly around her waist. Ethan stopped walking. He didn't know why. Something about her presence made him pause. Maybe it was the way she leaned down to listen intently to an elderly man sitting at the counter, as though his words mattered more than anything else in the world. He was still standing there when she noticed him. Her eyes lifted, catching his through the glass. For a second, time paused. The city's chaos dimmed. She blinked, surprised by the sight of a man in a tailored suit staring at her like he'd forgotten where he was. Then she smiled, small, polite, but genuine. And Ethan did something he hadn't done in years. He smiled back. The bell above the diner door jingled when he finally pushed it open. "You look a little out of place," the girl teased as she walked past him, refilling a customer's coffee. "Yeah," Ethan admitted, glancing around at the cracked vinyl booths and buzzing fluorescent lights. "Guess I took a wrong turn." "Well," she said, balancing the pot with one hand, "then maybe it's the right kind of wrong turn." He raised a brow. "You believe in that sort of thing?" She set the pot down on the counter and turned to face him fully. "Don't you?" Accidents that aren't really accidents. People meeting when they're supposed to. He looked at her, searching her expression. There was no guile in her face, no hidden agenda. Just curiosity and a quiet kind of confidence. "I'm Ethan," he said, offering his hand. "Lila," she replied, shaking it with surprising firmness. "So, Ethan, who took your own turn, what's your story?" And just like that, under the harsh diner lights and the hum of the city beyond the glass, a spark ignited. Neither of them knew it yet, but this night, this accidental meeting, would change both of their lives forever. The diner was almost empty by the time Ethan slid into a booth near the window. Outside, raindrops streaked down the glass, bending the neon reflections into waves of pink and blue. Inside, the hum of the fluorescent lights mixed with the faint hiss of the coffee machine. Lila approached, notebook in hand, her smile soft but curious. "So," she said, pulling a pen from behind her ear. "Businessman in a $1,000 suit, wandering into a diner at midnight. That's not a common sight. What'll it be?" Ethan smirked, loosening his tie. "Surprise me." Her eyes narrowed in mock suspicion. "Dangerous request. You might regret it." "I'll take my chances," he replied. With a small laugh, she scribbled something onto her pad and walked away. Ethan's gaze lingered longer than it should have. There was something magnetic about her, something raw, unpolished, yet brighter than any chandelier in the boardrooms he haunted. When she returned, she set a steaming mug in front of him, the aroma rich and earthy. Beside it, she placed a plate with a slice of cherry pie. "How special," she said. "Coffee strong enough to wake the dead and pie sweet enough to make you forgive me if it doesn't." Ethan chuckled, picking up the fork. "I'll hold you to that." Minutes turned into an hour. Conversation flowed effortlessly, as though they'd known each other far longer than the span of a single night. Lila asked questions that no one else bothered with, not about his wealth or career, but about what he wanted, what he missed, what he dreamed of. Ethan found himself answering honestly, something he hadn't done in years. I used to draw, he admitted at one point, surprising even himself. Sketches, mostly. Architecture. Cities. Then work took over, and I stopped. Lila leaned forward, resting her chin in her hand. You should start again. The city hasn't gone anywhere. It's waiting for you. Her words struck him deeper than they should have. What about you? He asked. She hesitated, twirling the pen in her hand. I paint. Not professionally. Not yet, anyway. But it's the only thing that makes me feel like me. There was a vulnerability in her eyes when she said it. And yet, there was also fire. The clock above the counter ticked past 2 a.m. when Ethan finally stood. I should go, he said reluctantly. Lila nodded, slipping the check onto the table. Don't worry about it. This one's on me. He frowned. I can't let you. Consider it a welcome gift, she interrupted, smiling softly. Ethan hesitated, then reached into his jacket. Instead of cash, he pulled out a simple business card. He scribbled his personal number on the back and slid it across the table. In case you ever want to show someone your paintings, he said. Lila looked down at the card, then back at him. Her lips curved into the faintest grin. Maybe I will. When Ethan stepped outside, the night air was cool against his skin. He walked away from the diner, but for the first time in years, his chest felt lighter. He couldn't shake the image of her, the warmth in her smile, the way her eyes sparkled when she spoke about her art. And somewhere deep down, he knew this wasn't the last time he'd see Lila. Not under the city lights. The week crawled by in its usual blur of boardrooms, contracts, and polite conversations that felt like negotiations disguised as friendships. Ethan sat at his desk on the 42nd floor of a glass tower, staring out at the skyline. From up here, the city looked like a machine, cold, efficient, unfeeling. And yet, all he could think about was the warmth of that tiny diner. The way Lila's laughter filled the silence. The way her eyes glowed when she spoke about painting. By Thursday evening, Ethan found himself walking again. No driver, no schedule. Just his polished shoes carrying him back to that neon-lit corner. The diner wasn't on his way home, but somehow it felt like the only place worth going. When he pushed the door open, the bell chimed and there she was, her hair tied up messily, apron smudged with coffee stains, balancing 3 plates with ease. She looked up, startled for a second, then broke into a smile. Well, look who decided to take another wrong turn, she teased, sliding plates onto a booth. Ethan smirked. Maybe I like being lost. Her laugh was quick, effortless. She motioned toward the counter. Sit. I'll bring you something better than last time. This night was different. There were no long gaps, no awkward pauses. Ethan told her stories about traveling for work, cities he'd visited but never truly seen. Lila painted pictures with her words about the canvases stacked in her small apartment, about the gallery shows she dreamed of but never had the courage to pursue. At one point, she pulled out a napkin and sketched something quickly with her pen, a crooked little skyline with a moon hanging above it. She pushed it across the counter. That's your city, she said softly. But see, it doesn't have to be just buildings. It can be alive, too. Ethan stared at the drawing longer than he should have. It was silly, simple, imperfect. And yet, it felt more real than any blueprint he'd ever designed. As the night wore on, Ethan realized how much he was letting down his guard. He didn't care if he sounded foolish, or vulnerable, or even weak. Around her, he wasn't Ethan Walker, successful businessman. He was just Ethan. And she treated him like that was enough. When the clock hit 1:30 a.m., Lila glanced at the door nervously. I should be closing soon. My boss hates when I stay late for extra company. Ethan chuckled, sliding out of his booth. Then maybe I'll leave before I get you in trouble. But as he reached for the door, her voice stopped him. Ethan? He turned. Lila's fingers fiddled with the pen she still held. Her eyes were uncertain, vulnerable in a way that made his chest tighten. I'm glad you came back, she said. He smiled, warm and genuine. Me too. And just like that, the city outside felt a little less lonely. Ethan hadn't planned to see her again so soon. He told himself he was too busy, that the long hours and endless meetings needed all of his attention. But late Friday night, his feet carried him back to the diner once more. Only this time, something was different. Through the glass, he saw Lila at the counter, but she wasn't laughing. Her hands twisted the strap of her apron, her brows furrowed as she listened to a tall man in a leather jacket. He leaned over the counter, his voice sharp, his expression angry. Ethan's chest tightened. Without thinking, he pushed open the door. The bell jingled, but neither of them noticed him at first. The man's voice cut through the quiet. You can't just ignore me, Lila. You think you're too good now? Painting won't pay your rent. Her jaw clenched. Derek, please. Not here. Not now. Ethan froze. Derek. The name hit him like a shard of glass. Finally, the man noticed Ethan standing there. He sneered, taking in the suit, the expensive watch. Ah. So this is why you're acting different. Derek, stop, Lila said, her voice low and urgent. Ethan stepped forward, calm but firm. Is there a problem here? Derek's lips curled into a mocking grin. Who the hell are you? Her savior? Another rich guy who thinks he can buy her attention? Lila winced. Derek, just leave. For a tense moment, Ethan thought Derek might lunge. But instead, he scoffed, muttered something under his breath, and stormed out, the bell clanging violently behind him. The diner fell silent. Lila exhaled shakily, pressing her hands to the counter. I'm sorry you saw that. Ethan stepped closer. You don't need to apologize. Who was he? She hesitated, then sighed. An ex. He doesn't know how to let go. Something burned in Ethan's chest, a mix of protectiveness and frustration. He wanted to press, to demand why she hadn't told him, why she let herself be cornered like that. But one look at her weary eyes stopped him. She didn't need his judgment. She needed understanding. Do you want me to walk you home tonight? He asked softly. Her gaze flicked up to his, surprised. For a moment, she seemed about to refuse. Then she nodded. Yeah. I'd like that. The walk was quiet at first, the city buzzing around them with neon signs and distant sirens. Ethan kept his hands in his pockets, glancing at her only when he thought she wouldn't notice. She hugged her jacket closer, eyes downcast. Finally, she spoke. I don't want you to think I'm fragile. Or that I can't handle my life. Ethan shook his head. I don't think that. I just don't like seeing someone hurt you. Her lips curved into the faintest smile. You're different, you know that? He chuckled. Different how? You listen. You don't try to fix me. You just care. The words warmed him more than he expected. When they reached her apartment, she paused at the steps, turning to face him. Thank you, Ethan, she whispered. For a heartbeat, he thought she might lean closer. He wanted her to. But instead, she gave him a small smile and disappeared inside, leaving him alone under the flickering streetlight. And for the first time in years, Ethan realized he didn't want to return to his empty penthouse. He wanted to be where she was. Ethan woke up the next morning with an unusual ache in his chest. Not from stress, not from exhaustion, something else. A pull, like gravity, urging him toward that small diner, toward the girl with auburn hair who somehow made the chaos of the city feel human again. But the day dragged him back into his world of glass towers and sharp suits. His assistant handed him schedules, contracts, meetings. Numbers, projections, expectations, all of it pressed down on him like steel walls. Yet as the hours passed, Ethan kept thinking about the napkin sketch she'd made, the sound of her laughter, the way she looked at him like he was more than a title. By the time night fell, he couldn't resist anymore. The diner was quieter than usual, only a couple of college students hunched over milkshakes. Lila stood behind the counter, wiping it down absent-mindedly, her expression far away. When she noticed him, her face brightened in a way that nearly knocked the breath out of him. "You're becoming irregular," she teased, though her voice was softer this time, warmer. "Guess I found my spot," Ethan replied, sliding into his usual booth. She brought him coffee without asking, then leaned against the counter. "Rough day?" He hesitated. Normally he would have lied, said everything was fine, that business was booming, that he was untouchable. But with her, honesty came easier. "Sometimes I feel like I'm living someone else's life," he admitted. "Like I'm stuck in a machine I built for myself, and now I can't find the exit." Lila's eyes softened. She didn't interrupt, didn't offer clichés. She just listened, her silence saying more than words. When he finally stopped talking, she gave him a small smile. "You know, you're allowed to want more than success. You're allowed to want something real." Ethan's throat tightened. "And what about you? What do you want?" Her gaze dropped to her hands. "To be brave enough to chase the life I've always imagined. To hang my paintings in a gallery. To prove to myself I'm not just surviving." He studied her, the fire hidden behind her quiet words. She wasn't just a dreamer, she was someone who wanted to fight for something bigger than herself. And God, he admired her for it. Later, when the diner closed, Lila surprised him. Instead of saying good night, she hesitated, then asked, "Do you want to see something?" Curiosity sparked, Ethan followed her out into the night. They walked several blocks, past the glowing signs and honking cars, until she led him up a narrow staircase above a bookstore. She unlocked a door and stepped inside. It was her apartment, small, cluttered, but alive. Paintings leaned against the walls, canvases splashed with colors that seemed to hum with emotion. Skies, cityscapes, faces blurred in shades of blue and gold. Ethan stood in awe. "These are incredible." Lila's cheeks flushed. "They're just practice." "No," he said firmly. "They're you. And they're extraordinary." For a moment, the room was quiet. Their eyes met, and something unspoken passed between them. Ethan stepped closer, drawn by an invisible thread. Her breath caught, but she didn't move away. The city roared beyond the window, neon lights flickering, horns blaring. But inside her tiny apartment, time seemed to stop. "Lila," he whispered. Her lips parted, and then, finally, the space between them dissolved. Their kiss was hesitant at first, soft and searching. But as her hands rose to his chest and his arms wrapped around her waist, the hesitation gave way to something deeper. Something real. The kiss lingered in Ethan's mind long after he left Lila's apartment that night. For days, it haunted him, not just the sweetness of it, but the truth it carried. It wasn't about passion alone. It was about freedom. About finally touching something real after years of hollow victories. But reality waited. His company demanded his presence, his board wanted results, and his father, the man who had drilled success into his bones, was arriving in town. "You can't keep running around with some waitress," his father said sharply during their meeting, his voice echoing through the office. "It's beneath you. You have responsibilities." Ethan felt the old chains tighten. The image of who he was supposed to be, the expectations he was supposed to fulfill. Yet even as his father spoke, Ethan's mind wandered to a paint-stained apartment, to a girl who made the city lights look softer. For the first time in his life, Ethan asked himself, whose life am I really living? That night, he didn't go home. He went to Lila. She opened the door in surprise, hair loose around her shoulders, paint smudges on her cheek. "Ethan?" "What?" "I can't do it anymore," he blurted out. "I can't live in a world that's all glass and lies. I don't want the board. I don't want the empire. I want," his voice broke. "I want you. And I want to figure out who I really am when I'm not pretending." Her eyes widened, shimmering. "Ethan, you don't have to give up everything for me." He stepped closer, shaking his head. "It's not about giving up. It's about finally choosing something. Choosing us. Choosing real." For a moment, silence filled the air. Then Lila reached for his hand, her grip firm. "If you're sure, then I'll be here. But you need to understand, this isn't going to be easy. You'll lose people. You'll lose comfort. You'll have to fight for every bit of the life you want." Ethan looked into her eyes, into that fire he admired so much. "Then I'll fight." Weeks turned into months. Ethan resigned from half his roles, shocking the corporate world. Tabloids wrote about his downfall, investors pulled away, but he didn't care. Every loss was replaced with something better: late nights in Lila's studio, mornings filled with laughter instead of phone calls, a life that was finally his own. And Lila? She grew braver too. With Ethan's encouragement, she held her first gallery show. Nervous, trembling, but radiant under the lights. People admired her work, collectors asked questions, and for the first time, she felt seen not as a survivor, but as an artist. At the end of the night, Ethan stood beside her, his arm around her shoulders. She looked up at him, eyes sparkling. "You did it," he whispered. "No," she thought, "we did it." Months later, on a rooftop overlooking the city skyline, they stood together. The same neon glow surrounded them, but it no longer felt cold or distant. It felt like their own universe. "I used to think the city only belonged to people who played the game," Ethan said softly. "But standing here with you, I realize it belongs to the ones who dare to love in it. Who dare to be real." Lila smiled, her hand finding his. "Then it's ours now." The city stretched before them, endless and alive. And for the first time, neither of them felt lost in its lights. They had found each other. And that was enough.